I know that a lot of us struggle with making our solos sound good, and we learn all these scale patterns. But anytime we play, it just sounds like we're running scales up and down, and that's probably because you are. And let me give you a little piece of advice: when you practice, whatever you practice is what you're going to sound like. So if you practice, running scales up and down, then yes, when you go to play, that's exactly what it's going to sound like, running scales up and down. And to be honest with you, sitting here running these scales, that's really difficult for me because that's not something I sit and practice. So I want to show you how to go about actually sounding better when you're using some of these scales. So let's dive in. So to start with, we're going to be in the key of E, and all the tabs and the backing track are available on my Patreon to Patreon members. But we're going to come up here where we can lay our finger flat here on the 9th fret, and we're getting an E chord. And we're going to play around this major pentatonic pattern right here. But I don't want us to just run this pattern up and down. When we talk about patterns, what I tell you is I want you to memorize it, and I want you to experiment around and play around inside of it. And the reason I tell you that is not because I want you to practice running it up and down. I want you to be able to look at the guitar neck and just see the pattern, not practice running it up and down. But more importantly, I also want you to see your home note, your tonic, your root note. All of these things mean the same thing. And in this case, that would be my E note, and it's right here on the 9th fret of the G string. So anytime that I'm playing, as long as I work my way back to this root note, it is always going to sound good. It's going to sound best if you hit the note of the key that you're in. And in this, I'm not real concerned about what the chords of the song are doing. I just want to sound good while I'm playing the easiest way possible. Now, what I want to do is I just want to start with the 3 notes that make up my chord, this triad, if you will. The D, the G, and the B string on the 9th fret make an E chord. So any of these notes will sound good when I'm playing, but I can't just use those 3 notes because that doesn't really sound musical. So what I'm going to do is just add the notes in between. So add the 11th fret on the D string and the 11th fret on the G string, and now I can kind of work my way around, but always trying to come back to my root note, always trying to think that I'm coming back to this E note, this 9th fret on the G string. So anytime I'm playing, I'm going to be kind of working my way around this one note. Just playing these few notes can get a little boring and monotonous, so let's add 2 more notes in there. We'll add, say, this 12th fret here on the G string. That's our flatted 3rd, comes from our minor scale. And we can also add this 12th fret on the B string, but we can also do some bends. So I can bend that 12th fret on the B string. I can even bend this minor note, this 12th fret, or any of these notes on the 11th fret. I can bend any of those, and I'm not always concerned about bending it up to a specific pitch. Sometimes I might want to bend it to notes that aren't in the scale, sort of the spaces in between. So you can get some really neat sounds and experiment around, play around with these bends, bending them different ways. Say bending them just a little bit, or maybe a whole step, or bending them more than a whole step. Bend them how it sounds good. Experiment around, play around with it. So let's see what that sounds like. now we're really starting to sound like we're getting somewhere. And not only can we add this 12th fret on the B string, but we can also add this 12th fret on the E string. That is our E note as well. And we can even bend that, or we can work our way to that note, or work our way back down to our other E note. We can even do, say, double stops like Jimi Hendrix would do, where we can hit two notes at the same time. We can do, some of these country bends, or bend up and hit another note. I mean, there's lots of combinations and variations that you can do, just playing around inside of this little pattern. But remember, I'm always trying to get back to this root note. So let's throw some of these other bends and throw some, double stops in there. And let's hit more than one string at a time and see what that sounds like. So I hope that you can see that, we're starting to really sound like a solo now. We're not running scales up and down. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I really have not mentioned the chords to the backing track. I really don't care what chords are being played. I can make it sound good just playing in this one scale, just kind of playing around with these different notes. Now, yes, as you get more advanced, you can target the notes as the chords of the song change. But you don't have to. You can sound good just kind of playing by feel inside of these scales. Using these bends, not worried as much about bending to a specific note. Sometimes we're wanting to get in between the spaces of the notes. I remind you that the backing track and the tabs to this are on Patreon if you're interested. But practice around with this, play around with this. I hope that this helps you. I hope this gets you out of the rut of running scales up and down. And as always, if you need something, reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you.